These are the 10 worst books I have read, according to Goodreads. And shout out to Criminale on YouTube, who I got this idea from. I'm pretty sure he got it from another YouTuber as well, but it just seemed like a really fun thing to do. And the idea is to go into your Goodreads setting and you filter out average rating to see what the worst and the best top 10 books are that you have read. And now I'm not going to list any books that have less than 1,000 reviews, because I feel like that would be punching down. So anyone over, 1,000 reviews, I think is like fair game. At number 10 is Sergio Gomez's The Visitor. Now, this one I had such high hopes for. I mean, look at that cover art, and it promises a Christmas story with an alien. I was really excited to read this, but I was just let down so hard by it because, honestly, it felt like such a retread of Alien, which could be good to some people, but I was expecting a little bit more, and it just didn't deliver on that front. But, at 3.34, it feels like it's probably a bit of a mixed bag. I'm sure there are people who loved this novella. Now, this one, I am kind of torn on. I don't know why people didn't like it. I really like this. It's Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. If I had to guess, this book is sort of first of all, it's a novella. It's very short, and it's a bit of a slasher, but it kind of starts out as promising something else, like maybe it's about a mannequin coming to life, which isn't really what happens in this book. So if I had to guess, I bet where people really had a disconnect with this one is probably that. But do I think it deserves to be in my, worst 10 books I've ever read? Absolutely not. I don't understand why it's so low, but maybe that's why. Maybe people had other expectations for this one. At number 8 is The Slob by Aaron Beauregard. Now, I was going through a phase where I wanted to read the most disturbing books that have ever been written, and this was on a lot of people's lists, and I understand why. It is a grotesque, disgusting read, and that is no shame to this author or anyone who enjoys this book or his writing. More power to you. I think everyone should be able to read what they want to read, and people should be able to write what they want to write within reason. This just wasn't it for me. For me, what makes a book disturbing is being connected to the characters and then having to see those characters go through something horrific. And with these kinds of books, these splatterpunk books, they tend to not make me give a damn about the characters, and that's what I had an issue with this one. I just didn't care about the people that horrible things were happening to. At number 7 is The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. Now, this one's kind of shocking to me. Maybe it's because so many people have read it and it has so many ratings that it brings that rating down a little bit, but this is a really solid horror thriller. If you've seen the movie by M. Night Shyamalan, it does a pretty good job of adapting the story with some pretty major changes towards the third act, which is fine. I enjoyed both, but I don't see why this one is so low, because I enjoyed this book quite a bit. If you spend any time on lists or groups that are dedicated to splatterpunk or disturbing book reads, you are going to hear Duncan Ralston's name in Womb. I did not like this book whatsoever. I understand why people do like this book. It wasn't for me. Again, I had sort of the similar problems with this one that I had with Aaron Beauregard's The Slob. It just was not for me. It seemed like shocking for shocking's sake, and I just didn't care for the characters. They were all pretty miserable people, so just not for me. Next up at 3.25 is The Witches of Salem, 1692. This is a great historical book. I don't know why it is so low. Maybe because it's such a big book. I don't know what people's problem with this one is, but I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4-star. And it's written by Stacy Schiff, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning author of Cleopatra, and she's written some other historical nonfiction books, and I think this one's great. I like spicy as much as the next person, so I enjoyed Earthbound, an erotic ghost story by Richard Matheson, but I understand why it sits at 3.25. Probably because it was released in 1982, and it was written by an old white man. So your mileage may vary on whether or not you enjoy this story, but for me, it's a really good little ghost story set at a beach. Lead character starts seeing a mysterious woman who may or may not be a woman depicted in a painting that is inside their summer home. I really enjoyed this quite a bit, but I understand why people didn't. And we have another Stephen Graham Jones on the bottom of the list, which this one makes a little more sense to me. I'm a huge fan, but The Last Final Girl didn't really work for me either, and it's not because of the subject matter or anything like that. It's more by the structure of the novel. It is written like a script, and for me, it just kind of takes the wind out of the sails of the thriller. It makes it not scary. Next up on the list is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoken by Eric LaRocca. Now, if you've spent any time on Book Talk, and specifically, Disturbing Reads Book Talk, you know that this book was like the biggest thing in the world like a couple years ago. And I think it deserves to be there. I see that it has a 2.97 average rating, which is kind of crazy to me. I thought this book could have gone harder, but I thought it was well written. It was entertaining, is disturbing, but not as bad as some made it out to be. And it's a quick read, and I think it does a great job of depicting a toxic relationship that is just disturbing. Last but not least on my list of worst books I've ever read, according to Goodreads, is No One Writes for Free by Judith Sonnet. It sits at 2.84, and I know why, because this is a disturbing read. Absolutely atrocious. But for me, this one does not deserve to be this low. I enjoyed this one. I know what I've said about disturbing reads and not caring about the characters, but I thought Judith Sonnet did an incredible job. It follows Jody as she's driving her children across country, and they pick up a hitchhiker who has really horrendous intentions for all of them. And think of the worst possible things that you could read about, and it's in this book. So it doesn't shock me that it has such a low rating, but it wouldn't be in my top 10 worst books ever read. But according to Goodreads, it is. There you have it. Those are the 10 worst books I have read according to Goodreads. How about you? Have you read any of these books? What do you think? What are some of the worst books you have read according to Goodreads? Let me know in the comments.